Good afternoon to everybody who has signed up for this CPD session. The Contemporary Music Centre in Dublin, because of the COVID crisis, has decided to have a series of 3 continuing professional development sessions on online performances. Last week, we had Owen Callery and Sean James Garland showing us how to create online performances. This week, we've invited composer-performer Nick Roth. Very welcome, Nick.
Hey, Linda.
And he's going to give us a session on monetizing online performances. And the reason that we are doing this, and the 3rd session will be marketing online performances, is because we believe that if online performances are going to become a thing of the future as they are during COVID, be they as an alternative process or longer than we think with COVID, CMC wants to be sure that the artist gets paid. We're not saying this is a cure-all, and Nick has a very detailed presentation ready for us, but we are saying that we need to know what's out there. Nick has taken a lot of time and energy to put together a survey of what's out there, and I warmly welcome you, Nick, and thank you on behalf of CMC for doing this session for us. Over now to Nick.
Thank you, Linda, and hello, everybody. Monetizing online performance. We're going to try and cover as much ground as possible in the 30 minutes. There's a fair bit to get through. So firstly, just to deal with ticketing an online performance. Essentially, this is not that much different to ticketing a regular concert. I'm sure many of you are already aware of ticketing platforms like Eventbrite, Tito, Tickets.ie, and so on. And the way that functions is more or less the same. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of that. There are a couple of things that you'll need to tweak and customize. Obviously, this dovetails into Owen's talk last week about how to create the live stream, and will, I'm sure, also dovetail with Naomi's talk on how to market it. What I'm focusing on here is really just the mechanism of how to do that. So the first thing is to choose your ticket provider. And the main factor for that, most of these more or less provide the same function. The main factor really is to look at the fees, which do differ a little bit. As you can see here with Eventbrite, which is probably the largest kind of ticket platform currently, you have a fee of 49 cents plus 4% on the tickets with their essential function. The other platforms are in and around the same, but there is a little bit of discrepancy. Tito is 3% plus a 1.4% Stripe fee, 25 cents, and so on and such forth. Tickets.ie, I should mention here, is the kind of least customizable of these, in that they don't actually have an online platform you can do this through. You have to email them and they send you back a link and so on. So it's not quite as good as a platform. And actually works out the most expensive. So if we say we had a digital stream, which we wanted to ticket at an event price of €5, that works out like this. Tickets.ie, you'll get $3.50 per ticket, stream ticket €4, Eventbrite $4.31, Biletto and Tito at $4.53. I should also point out that that's with Biletto, there is a better option, which is a basic function, which gives you slightly more cut of the ticket, but which allows less customization. So, you're really looking at Eventbrite, Biletto, or Tito, I think, as the 3 best providers doing this. I've gone with Eventbrite with this because it's one I've used before, so I already had an account. It is also, as I said, the largest, and recently, or last year, I think, they actually partnered with Facebook directly. So if you now create your tickets through Facebook, it will duplicate that on your Eventbrite platform. So presumably it's one that people will be using more and more anyway. So the gig that I'm going to be modeling is through YouTube. But it's worth mentioning that obviously that could be from any other streaming platform, Facebook Live, a Twitch account, Instagram Live. It doesn't really matter what the stream is coming through, as we'll see in a minute. And because I'm using YouTube, it doesn't go directly from the native platform, so I'll be using Open Broadcaster software to actually feed the stream. So here's our walkthrough. We go to eventbrite.com, create an event. And all of this is very much the same as you would have done for any other concert. I'll just be putting in the basic information here. Obviously, if this was a real gig, you'd be adding as many tags and keywords, information, images, promo videos, trailers, and all of that to make your performance as visible as possible. But this, I'm sure, will be covered by Naomi. So here's the critical thing here. Your location, you now have an option to add it as an online event. So that's the option we've chosen. This model I did a couple of days ago, so we're putting in our start time of when I did this video, which was around 1 o'clock. So this is the start time that the event is going to go live, and this is obviously quite critical, as we'll see in a moment when we're actually doing the stream itself. So you've put in your basic information. All of this you will fill in, and Naomi will tell you how to customize all of that. We'll skip that for now. So here you put in that your live video content is coming from a live stream. And here the critical thing is your live stream link, which is here. So in order to get that link, we're going to go out of here in a sec. But first, I just want to show you this. This is quite interesting. So in your live stream, you can also include documents which can be downloadable for your participants. This can be quite useful because you can also use this in your tiered structure so that people who pay, say, a higher ticket price could get a download of music, or they could get a booklet, or you can offer some kind of downloadable resource which gives people a reason to pay slightly more for the ticket. So let's just see how we find this live stream link. So we're going to go into YouTube. In your YouTube channel, under Create, you have a Go Live link. If you click that, it'll take you into YouTube Studio. And here you set up your stream with whatever title you want to give it. When you're doing this, I would highly recommend testing it. And when you test it, make it private. You'll want to make that private anyway, so that this is only viewable for people who've bought the ticket. So here, as Owen showed you last week, you have a stream key, which you'll need to copy. And then you'll need to enter that stream key in OBS. So you go into your settings in Open Broadcast Studio. I'm going to show you the window, but this is me entering that stream key into Open Broadcast Studio. And then that will tell you to link there. You can now start streaming here. Hello, how are you? That's me in the past. And here we're connecting. So the crucial thing here is that the button you do not want to press until your gig actually starts is the Go Live button. But what you do want to take from here is your sharing key. This is exactly the same link that you would use to share any other video on YouTube. You see it up here at the top. So that's your share. So that's the link that you want to copy, just like you're sharing a regular YouTube video, and you paste that in as your live stream link. Okay, and then that's pretty much it. So the last option you have is to create these kind of different tiers of tickets for different prices. For our purposes, we'll just say it's a free ticket, and you can also create a limited number of tickets, which might be useful, I think, to incentivize people. Once you publish that, you'll get a link to the tickets, and this is what you'll be sharing. This is where you want to direct people to. This is what the ticket will look like as a link, and here you can just register, and that's me registering for the ticket. And there we go. So I've now bought the ticket. This is obviously free. Now, when you view this, what that will give you is a link to the live stream. So when you click on that, which you can do at any time, it will take you to the event page, and from there you can then click through onto the YouTube channel, which was the private link. So all of this can be set up in advance of the gig itself. When you're actually ready to start, that's when you push the go live button. And as soon as you do that, there'll be a little bit of a lag, but a few seconds later, you will go live on your event page, and the gig is about to start anytime now. So that is basically the mechanism. As you can see, it's very simple. It's really not that much different to setting up a regular concert if you've ever done that before. And we'll leave for a moment the question of whether people will pay to see that, what they will want to expect to see in return for their money, and those kinds of aesthetic questions. That is essentially the mechanism. And that's pretty much the same regardless of which ticketing platform you use, which streaming service you use. It's more or less the same mechanism. All you really need is to connect your streaming server to your hosting platform via the link, and then share that and use the share link as your live stream concert location. And hopefully people will buy tickets to that, and this will be a source of income. So that's how to ticket an online performance. As you see, very simple. Another mechanism which I think is very useful and actually potentially more useful for monetization online are donation buttons. And these are useful because you can use these as embeds to other streams which are not necessarily paid streams. And you see a lot of musicians doing this, especially through this current crisis, just as a means of offering people a window into their musical practice and connecting with their audiences. The good thing about these buttons is that you can just host them there, and it's kind of like a virtual tip jar. So if people are enjoying the stream, they might be incentivized to give you a donation. And I think actually my take would be that it's probably financially more viable to make the stream itself free and access and offer the possibility of a donation. I think it will certainly it will give you a wider audience, and actually I think financially might kind of even out. Rather than people paying €5 per ticket, they can donate, and that obviously allows people to donate more than the ticket price. Another good reason to do that is that it makes the event more accessible, more visible on social media. As you can see here, 50% of all of the events that are taking place in these streaming services are discovered through social media, and within that, 85% of discoveries are taking place on Facebook. There are also obviously lots of other streaming platforms. Of these, Twitch, I think, is the most popular and certainly the kind of coolest. It's kind of also worth mentioning that musicians are pretty late to the party in this, and we're about 10, 15 years behind the gaming community, who've been using these platforms for a lot longer than we have. So all of the lessons and how to do this, how to kind of negotiate, navigate these are really to be found from listening to members of the gaming community. And there's a lot of forums there which explain how to do this. It does mean that you're competing for audiences in communities which have quite different interests, certainly within the native platform. So you can use those embed buttons within those streams and pretty much anywhere, including on your own website. These are very simple to create. They take less than a minute. Probably the most recognizable one, which gives people a sense of financial security, is PayPal. This is the paypal.me page. Very simple. You go to PayPal. You can create these. It links to your own personal PayPal account, which you can then obviously link to your bank account. And you can just put this up on any website, any stream, any platform, and it gives people a mechanism by which they can donate to your practice. Another one which is very popular is Ko-fi. which was kind of designed to give musicians or artists the price of a coffee. But it's obviously customizable. You can give as much as you want, and that has its own kind of micro community around it. And these can also obviously be built into your own websites as well. If anyone doesn't have a website, I do recommend this Bandzoogle platform. It is paid, you have to pay per month, but it's kind of built with all of this functionality there. So you can very easily embed all of these streams and donations, and it has its own community around it as well. So one of the questions I had in advance, which is worth addressing, is can you monetize a channel like a YouTube or a Twitch channel itself? The short answer is yes. The long answer is it's not very simple. And really, again, what you're competing with against here are professional YouTubers, professional Twitchers, if that's a word, who basically spend, they're on this thing 9 to 5 or the equivalent or more every week. In order to monetize your YouTube channel, there are several requirements you have to meet, one of which is that you have to have more than 30,000 subscribers before you can actually monetize the channel. In order to even get towards that, meeting the content, meeting the guidelines, you also have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours watch time. Yeah, the answer is yes, you can do this, but in order to do it, you're going to really have to put in a long time building up your YouTube platform, hosting a lot of content, really driving people to try and subscribe to your channel, and that's pretty much a job in addition to your job of being a musician. So no, I don't think it's a viable, unless you already have a large audience base who've already subscribed to you. I don't think that aiming for this as a kind of an income stream is really viable. The Twitch kind of requirements are slightly less draconian. You have to become an affiliate with 50 followers and 8 hours of streaming, which puts you on the path to becoming a partner, where you have to average 75 viewers at any one time, which is not unachievable. But anybody who knows who's been doing live streams, even getting 75 people with contemporary music can be challenging at a single time. So yeah, I wouldn't really stress that this is definitely the means to a platform, unless you're just sitting on a lot of content and have a lot of time in your hands. Another model for musicians that I think is really worth checking out at the moment is a subscriber patronage model. And in a way, we might be returning to the kind of musician patronage models that existed a couple of 100 years ago, where most composers had kind of a patron who had a lot of money, with the exception that now we're kind of looking at micro patronage rather than having one patron who basically subsidizes your existence. We're looking at having communities of patrons who are giving you monthly donations of €5, €10, €15 in order to support your practice and access the content that you're going to give them. Again, it's worth stressing that this is not necessarily an easy thing to commit to. It does require a large commitment on the behalf of the artist to really do justice to this. So there are a few different platforms to do this on. I think Patreon is certainly the most well-known and well-organized. Essentially, the way that functions is that you can create different tiers where you offer your subscribers varying levels of content depending on the amount that they give you per month. So for $2 a month, you get a certain amount of access, and for $5 you get that access plus, and so on. There's a lot written on this, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of depth. There is a link sheet that everyone is going to be sent following the presentation, along with all of the slides as a PDF. And within the links, there are a couple of places where you can read a lot more about how to do this. But just to talk a little bit about it, the kinds of things which people are offering through Patreon pages are obviously exclusive content, which is content which will only be seen by the subscribers. And of course, this can also be tiered. And this could be music, obviously, downloads, videos, recordings. But it's also worth mentioning that it doesn't have to necessarily just be music. Some people, a lot of musicians who happen to be really into cooking are giving their subscribers a recipe every day, or they might be also artists, and so they're doing drawings. And so this can actually be multidisciplinary. And really anything that you can create can be offered as a kind of part of your tiered program to give to your patrons. Another obviously way that you can do this is that content which will be released generally can be given early. So this could be that when you have a new record coming out, you give it to your Patreon subscribers 2 months before, so that the first to hear it, there's a certain amount of exclusivity to that. Another option could be actually crediting the patron. Obviously, this is something where people like to see their names in print. And that kind of feeds into the patron actually having an input into your creative process. I mean, this could be things like, if you ask for an encore at the end of your set, it's the patrons who paid a certain amount of money who get to choose which song you play at the end of that. And really, it could be anything. It could be any kind of amount of connectivity with your fan base. And in the links, there's a lot about this, but it's really about creating a kind of a sense of community between you and your supporters. And obviously bearing in mind that you might also be a supporter of some of the people supporting you. This could also be a mutually beneficial community. Another thing, obviously, is physical goods, CDs, vinyls, letters, postcards, digital downloads. And another thing which a lot of people stress as being very useful is that within your patron community, you can create up a Discord or a Slack server. This is essentially like Google Documents, but it's a private server that only the fans can access. And that means that they can kind of talk amongst themselves, and it creates this sense of a vibrant community and gives people a reason to subscribe because they want to be a part of that conversation. Another model, which I'm sure people are already familiar with, but it's definitely worth mentioning in the context of this, is just regular crowdfunding. There are, as I say, a lot written on this, and there's a big link in the document, but this can be very successful for specific projects. Another area which we shouldn't miss is just actually selling your music directly to people. There are lots of people wanting to support artists, especially at this time. The problems with this, of course, are those faced by the music industry as a whole. As we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, people are generally streaming, which gives practically no income to the artists who create it. And also, they're generally approaching the streams through playlists. As you can see here, playlists are almost 90% of the listenership, which means that no one is going to the whole album. They might just be listening to one track. And as I'm sure you know, the figures for streaming are extremely low. You can see there Spotify is giving 0.0028 pence per stream, which means it takes 3,000 hours to earn 3,000 streams to earn 1 hour's UK minimum wage. Just to give you an example, this is from Diatribe Records, the label that I run. In the last 90 days, our top track had 51,000 streams in 90 days. That generated €143 in 3 months, which you're not going to be buying a whole lot of coffees for. So a great model which gives a lot more percentage to the artist directly is Bandcamp. We've been with Bandcamp for more than a decade now. And what we've really seen, especially in the crisis, is that Bandcamp, because it's an independent platform, their cut is usually 15%, but they've actually been creating these waiver days where they've just given all of the money directly to the artists. And a lot of labels have been then saying, okay, on those days, we'll give the money directly to the artist within 24 hours. We did that. And the first time we did it, it was in April. We found it was actually the day we did it was the biggest revenue generated by the label ever. So people were really wanting to support artists by directly buying their music. However, they did it each month. The second month it was markedly less. In the third month, it's really dropped off. So that kind of charity-based support model has certainly weakened through this crisis and can't necessarily be relied on going forward. CD Baby is a great way to access digital streaming if you do want to get your music out on those platforms. And the big picture, so I mean, the question here is any of this or what of it is really viable? One of the big problems with monetizing your live streams and concerts and so on is that you're going up against content which is produced at a very, very high level with professional television teams and sound recordings, and it's being given completely for free. So it's very difficult to actually compete against that. We've seen the hugely successful Island Perform series, which this great stream by Comet Begley had 50,000 views. You know, to actually go against that and say, can you pay €10 to watch my live concert is tricky. So the IMC did do a survey recently about this, asking people which of these statements resonates with you most strongly regarding the idea of a paywall for exclusive access to live concerts. Of that, only 9% say they would be happy to pay a regular ticket price, and that was to access exclusive high quality full concerts. 39% said they would be happy to pay a reduced price to view the same. 47% of people said they weren't really interested in engaging with online concerts at all, and 5% no answer. So, you know, it's tricky, really, is the bottom line. There's a great Journal of Music article that came out, and there's a link to this in the document sheet as well, that whether we like it or not, this live streaming model is going to be part of the future. Even if there's a vaccine tomorrow and venues open as normal, we'll still be expecting to see a kind of a hybrid model of live streams going in. So the effects of this crisis are not going to be disappearing anytime soon. There we go, 2 minutes over schedule. Okay, so let me jump out of here. Is everyone still alive? Linda, you're muted.
Yeah, Nick, thank you very much for that. That was a fantastic, you know, whistle-stop tour through everything that's out there. And as Nick said, we CMC will be sharing all of his slides and links that are a deeper dive with all of that. And that's all part of that. You get an initial introduction, and there's no question but the pace is quite quick. But it's a perfect segue, really, for you, Nick, to be talking about, you know, is it worth it all in the first place? Because that's part and parcel of CMC's policy or psychology in presenting these CPD events on online services, because online performances. Because sometimes for some people, an introduction like this is all they need to get started. And for other people, this is enough for them to know they don't want to do it at all. And some people sample bits and pieces out of it. So nobody should feel that they need to take all of it on board or any of it on board. It's also the survey alone and the work that Nick has put into it to give today's presentation is a lifting of the lid, if you like, on something like this. And I certainly find it very helpful myself. I would like to sort of say that how performers receive this versus how composers receive this could be quite different. And obviously there's a category of people who are both composers and performers. And it would be nice to hear in questions, it would be nice if we could hear from both cohorts. So I also choirs, Nora, I mean, you know, things like this Patreon for choirs might, as Nick was talking, I was thinking they tend to have these wider families, aunties and grannies and all that, who would often come to their concerts. And amateur orchestras and amateur choirs tend to have no problems producing audiences. And that may be an idea for them. So these are just very basic throw-out comments. So if anybody wants to raise their hand, either their own personal hand or the emoji, please let us hear from you. Nick is ready.
Just to respond on the point about choirs, thanks very much, Nick. That was very informative and very helpful. There's one choir that I think might be interested in performing in a live streaming kind of way. And I guess it depends on the type of work you're involved in. And when you're working with different groups, some of them are more, they'd have different types of content that would be more or less suitable for launching a full concert. So it kind of depends who you work with. And then some musicians who are all within an ensemble, everybody's a professional and everybody's working to a professional standard all the time. And so they can put more time and effort and produce something different. One of the choirs that I was talking about when I was asking about the YouTube, it's actually, it's a choir for seniors. And they're just launching this week their first virtual choir video. And they are looking for all the information possible to know about the best way to make that live. And they're not actually looking for a revenue stream because they're a registered charity and they're very well funded. But it's very useful to be informed about what can happen on these streams. And if somebody else is advertising on your channel, or I don't even know how that happens. So I guess that was where that question came from for them. But 50,000 is an unlikely number of subscribers. So, which, you never know.
You don't know.
But with other choirs, then I guess for amateur choirs, it would have to be a very infrequent kind of a concert, because it takes, apart from the fact that we can't get together to rehearse, and we don't have a venue in which to rehearse, but I guess if you did have a big wide outdoor open venue or a church that you were miking up and you were putting on a concert, a live streamed concert, it is going to be an infrequent event. So when you're setting yourself up for these things, you have to think that, am I doing all of this for a one-off event, or is this worth a one-off event, or really is this for people who are putting on concerts every weekend? So so they're the considerations from a choir point of view that I will have to think about.
Nick?
No, I was just saying, I think Ailish has a question there.
Okay, yeah. Can I just come in there though first then, Nora, to respond? And I was thinking all the way through this and in the preparation, I suppose even all these donate and monetizing aren't just about monetizing. So the question that Nick posed there was, is it worth it all anyway? And I think sometimes it's not worth it monetarily, even though that's the primary object of those platforms. But they can be very useful ways of getting your message out there, even for a choir that doesn't need funding. And I know Rachel has put a question into the chat line as well, but Ailish, go ahead, sorry.
I just have I have a question just for clarification. You know about the donation buttons? You can't put those on a YouTube concert, can you?
You can put a link to them, yeah.
You can put a link.
Yeah, so
under the concert, like. Okay.
Yeah, you can just in the description. So it would just be paypal.me/Ailish Kerrigan or whatever your link is. If someone puts that, it'll take you there.
Okay.
Directly.
And the other thing is, pardon my ignorance, but if you do a live stream concert, can you then put it on YouTube so that it's there all the time? You can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's an option to record it as you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why, when you mentioned Facebook Live and Instagram Live, as that, they're ones that you can put donation buttons on easier, or? Did I miss something in it?
Well, you can. I mean, so you can stream from them easier, certainly, because you don't need the third-party software. And I mean, you can put donations buttons onto all of these. You can also ticket them as well. The benefit, I think, of doing them is that you're then accessing your existing community. within Facebook or within Instagram, you know, your followers are seeing them all rather than just seeing you sharing a ticketing link. So they're just more visible, I think.
And you just put your name. If you were doing it on a YouTube, I'm kind of slow on this. If you were doing a YouTube concert, you just put under the concert, you just put your name at PayPal.
Yeah, so you have your own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And within the description of the video, if you want to add that link, you just you have to create the button on PayPal first. That will give you the link, and then you just paste that as text.
Okay, thank you.
But you can also embed that on Facebook and pages, so it actually looks like the button, and on your website and so on.
You can embed it on what?
You can embed it as HTML code.
On what?
You could put in a query afterwards, Ailish, maybe to Nick, if it's specific.
Yeah, I mean, all when you go to the PayPal page, all of that information is there. It'll tell you how to do it.
Okay, thanks.
I think the wider point here is that essentially you don't get anything for free. Like if you want a really wide, broad audience base on any one of these platforms, you really have to work hard at creating it. You're not going to go online and just kind of, you know, make your video, make your stream, and have 50,000 people watching it. You really need to put in several. I mean, no, this isn't just addressed to you, but just generally, like, you know, you really have to put in several hours a day building this up over several years to get to the kind of position where you're actually making a living out of doing it, or even a portion of your living, really. And so the big question is whether you want to actually dedicate the time to doing that specifically on the digital platform.
Nick, Rachel Quinn has a question, and I see then Emma Coulthard has her hand up, as does Ken, Colleen and Owen. But could we go with Rachel's question, which she has already put in?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, I'm probably asking, probably going over ground, but just say, for example, you have a pre-recorded concert video with very good, video material, not necessarily for concert, but other things as well, and you basically want to get that out and try and get some kind of funding back. You can either do a donation in the description on the YouTube. You can, I suppose, I know this sounds mad, can you link in with Google Ads and basically send it off wherever you want to see if there's an interest group who would be interested in this particular project or recording, and put it,
I mean, one thing you could do, if the content hasn't been released previously, then you could still ticket it as a preview or as a premiere. Like the concert itself doesn't necessarily have to be live or in real time. So you could put a premiere event, which was the world premiere viewing of whatever that performance was, and offer tickets to watch that live in real time.
Well, it actually is a world kind of premiere idea, and it's still very valid for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, you're not going to get the kind of scale of interest in Ireland for class. I mean, I'm thinking that this is more classical.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of targeting, I'm targeting somewhere way away who just don't have access to that kind of premiere material through Google Ads.
I mean, so Google Ads, you pay them though, right?
Yeah, it's like a Facebook ad, same idea, but you can target it. You can say, okay, I want to go and I want to send this off to Tokyo. I want to go and send it off to wherever, China, and you see if people will bite and be interested in it, because it's kind of, it's Western music and they don't necessarily have that kind of stuff, So, but the thing is, I'm just wondering, well, I haven't tried to do it, so I guess it might be easy enough to do. That you have this video which you have on YouTube, and then you're going to be posting that off through Google Ads to get a wider variety of people who might bite at it. But then you want to try and get them to pay money for it. So it's I mean,
if you want people to pay for the content, I wouldn't put it public on YouTube first. Like people are going to pay essentially for some level of exclusivity. So I would suggest doing it as an event at a specific time, and then if you wanted to use Google AdWords or Facebook for that, that you advertise the concert through Google or through Facebook, then you can choose specific
maybe
regions.
you could do Eventbrite. You could say it's an Eventbrite, and people can. Does that always have to be a certain time, a specific time, or can people just kind of click into it whenever they like? Or
well, the concert will go live at a specific time, and then subsequently, I mean, you could do it every week, you know, if you wanted. I mean, what I would suggest with all of these things is just trying them out and seeing what works, and experimenting and seeing what your audience base is. And the same with ads. Like, I mean, sometimes when we're doing concerts, we pay for Facebook ads or Google ads, and nothing comes back. And you might have reached 50,000 people, but not a single one of them bought a ticket. So, I wouldn't invest huge amounts in it initially. I would just experiment, try and see if you get a result. I mean, what you really want is that whatever you've paid for on the ads is at least paid back through actual ticket sales. So, try a little bit, see if it works. The next time you might tweak it, do it again.
The other advantage you have, Rachel, is that the performance has already been taken place. So you're not trying to fund the performance. You're trying to get something after.
Yeah, exactly. It's pre-recorded and then put with a video. So therefore the video is really entertaining, and obviously the music is pre-recorded, so it's a good quality sound, like it's like a recording.
Yeah.
But it's what you do with it. What you do with it once you have it. That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, like it is tricky. There's a huge amount of content out there, especially at the moment. But you've got to be in it to win it. In general, I would say, certainly in my experience, that doing a pre-recorded performance is so much less stressful than trying to do something live. Like even giving a Zoom talk and your screen goes blurry, if that happens in the middle of a gig while you're playing,
I agree. Yeah.
And I think people are quite happy to turn up and watch something, even though that it's been recorded 2 weeks ago in the studio, and they still feels like an event. And the great thing actually for the musicians is that you can watch your own gig and talk to your friends.
Yeah, and so I think we'll move on to Emma now, and then I know that Ken and Owen Callery also have their hands up. Emma?
Okay, first of all, thanks very much, Nick. I think that was a wonderful overview, and the donate button is a really good idea, because I think you're right that a lot of people are more generous than we think. Journal of Music, for instance, recently put out a call for people who want to be patrons and subscribe, and I actually did it. And if they'd asked me for a tenner, I probably wouldn't have done it. But what they put in is, that community of supporters and feeling part of something. And that's something that the internet does very well. It's a completely different ballgame, isn't it? I wanted to encourage Nora. Last week I had a baptism of fire. I'm head of a music service here in Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan, and we did 20 live stream workshops for 100 schools, and then we did on Friday night a curated live concert, and we had thousands of views. And what we did again was a mix of pre-recorded videos that we put into one iMovie, and then I hosted it live on my phone in my back garden. So I did an introduction on the phone, switched the stream onto video. I had to get a new MacBook because this processor unit wasn't good enough. So I have a MacBook Pro now, but it was hugely successful. All the videos are now saved on our Facebook page for the music service. And the next bit is we're going to curate them onto YouTube channels so people can search. And it was terrifying, but it was massive success because your audience is suddenly global. You've got aunts and uncles and relatives in different countries.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is really interesting is join some Facebook special interest groups. So I'm in a flute forum. That flute forum has 5,000 members in the States. So if I put up something on flute, I'll share a link to the flute forum. I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm not a techie. I had to learn how to use OBS last week. I would be very encouraging, particularly with amateur choirs.
Okay.
Youth choir has been huge. People like to hear some music. I would tie in with Nick. The donation button's really good. It does work, and you'd be surprised how big an audience you get.
And can I ask, Emma, how were the performances recorded? Were these large groups gathered together, or were these all small ensembles? Or
it was a mix. So I've had to keep 70 people in work for the last 6 months. So some of them were videos kids sent in on their phones. and we put them together in iMovie, or we used Pro Tools or Final Cut to make them into movies, to make composites. Some of them were just individual kids performing they'd recorded. The youth choir was done as a composite using Cubase. So we lined that up with the video and the audio. And then we had a completely ridiculous track with 160 players, full orchestra and brass band. And someone managed to persuade a TV producer to do that one. It was magnificent, but I kind of laughed when I saw the scope of it, but they did it. It's amazing what you can do.
Well done.
I'll send you some links if you want to see it. But I just wanted to encourage you, because it is an incredible thing, and people go back and watch it again and again.
Yeah. And before we move to Ken, I mean, Nick knows, and all the others involved in the CPD, that's the whole point of this session, to give people just those first few steps and encouragement to, as Emma says, you'd be surprised what you can do when you start. Ken, would you like to put a question to Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much a question as just, I suppose, a couple of observations from our own perspective, providing online content during this pandemic and what it means going forward. I suppose things that we've learned as well. I mean, I think fundamentally, you know, this needs very careful consideration on the part of the creator, whether they want to fold it into their strategy for engagement in general, whether it's a good idea or not, because I think that we have an opportunity now, because of this massive collective pause that we've all just been through, to maybe reestablish like the value proposition of what we're all doing, particularly in light of a kind of an increasingly on-demand consumer culture, which expects everything to be free. So I think that's a much bigger challenge that we have to try and fix. And I think that, you know, fundamentally investing in the creator, and not necessarily the creation. Like, we have the existing binaries that we have are, you know, pay me money for a performance, you know, pay to come and see my concert, and that's fine, and that works in the real world. But I think in the digital sphere, there's an opportunity actually to change the model fundamentally and say, invest in this creator and these works will be a byproduct, you know, of that, because you're kind of changing the social contract in a way, if you like. And the problem with, and Nick mentioned this, so the problem with putting content on YouTube or Facebook is about managing expectations. I mean, everybody expects that stuff to be free, you know, and people will pay. I mean, there are people who will pay to support artists all the time, in any situation. And but I think largely it's kind of solidarity money that doesn't last. You know what I mean? So during a pandemic, I mean, as Nick alluded to, you know, when Diatribe waived the fee, or when Bandcamp waived and Diatribe, that was their largest one for the first month, and then there's a kind of a sharp drop off. We noticed the exact same thing in anything that we did. You know, I mean, there's kind of like online fatigue set in really, really quickly. But I do think on the upside of it, because I don't want to sound like a downer, on the upside of it, I do think that streaming fundamentally, or not streaming, let's just call it online digital engagement, because live streaming is scary at the best of times. If anything goes wrong, you're screwed. But providing digital content, or providing that content online, is actually a fantastic way to reach out to new audiences, because that's where their eyes are. In the survey that we did, which Nick mentioned in his excellent overview, that's our audience. That's our existing audience. 47% of our existing audience are not interested in engaging with online content. But there's a whole new audience that for them this is very natural, you know. You know, people talk a lot about digital nativism, and I was doing something for a friend of mine recently. I was writing some notes on this for him, and I just realized that somebody born in 2003 will be 18 next year, so they're legally an adult in 2021. These people have never known a world without the ubiquity of the internet and all of the things that, you know, it can deliver instantaneously. And I think we need to consider that as the future audiences that will actually be the people that will be responsible for the investment. You know what I mean? This creative investment between the creator and an invested audience member who feels like that they can be, you know, they can be a part of that, because streaming was always about you know, getting engagement for the main event, and now it's become a pseudo main event, I really think that we need to, you know, there's many ways, but I think gaming the system in a way, you know, this YouTube thing about, you know, necessitating 1,000 followers in order to begin monetization. I mean, obviously we know what the checks and balances are there for, but I mean, I would have no hesitation in subscribing to every single Irish musician I know, subscribing to their YouTube channel, turning off notifications because I don't care about that stuff, but like just to support in that way. Equally for promoters looking for Irish artists abroad, if they see there's a like 500, 600, 700, 1,000, 2,000 followers, as opposed to the 10, 12, 15 that we you know what I mean, that generally happens, you know, we're accelerating that in a digital sphere. So I think there's loads that we can do that is fundamentally new and different in this kind of space. And I think that it's a brave new world, because there are no physical boundaries. And I think that streaming should represent things that you couldn't actually do on a stage, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just to add to that, like, I think what we really need to look to are things that you couldn't do at a live concert. I didn't really get a chance to go into this in this talk, but like things like 360 audio are potentially like a really interesting way. So this is where you record something in 360 degrees, and people can listen to it. And actually YouTube is the native platform for this. And depending on how they move, they can affect how they hear in a room. And that's something that, you know, you can really see why people would want to actually access it online, because they'd have to be watching it through a computer. Similarly, things like AR or augmented reality, or even virtual reality, where you're entering into something as a virtual world, which just gives you an entirely different experience. Like, I think, you know, you have to question, if people are going to access the content in this way, can we, as you say, game the system and find ways that they're able to engage with it in ways that are unique to that platform?
Absolutely. Owen Callery had
so just to respond to that, so End Debates has I think is Ireland's leading practitioner in 360 audio. He's in Trinity. He's done a lot of performances. I'll send that on. Actually, I'll include it to the link sheet. So don't send the link sheet, Linda. I'll send you a new one with that in. It's really cool. You can, you know, listen to a space and see it. It's tricky to do at the moment because you have to essentially have 12 cameras and then thread them together afterwards. So just to make a short video takes hours and hours and hours of post-production to do it. But the technology is going to get faster. The software to do that is going to get better and more open source. So it's certainly something to look for in the future.
And just so you know, we will be posting all of these recorded sessions, so you can go back over them and pick up on the bits that you may have missed, in addition to the slides and the links. So, Owen, do you want to?
Yeah, I just had sort of two very quick questions, and one maybe broader question for you as a kind of the label owner and kind of practitioner as well. So the first thing, just in two very quick things about Eventbrite. So does Eventbrite send a notification when you go live, when you put in your?
No, I don't think so.
And then the second one was, so say, okay, everyone gets a free ticket, and halfway through you flash up your URL saying, oh, guess what? If you donate now, you get a bonus download or something during the stream. So can you update the Eventbrite ticket, or is that done on your own platform?
So it's customizable as to when you release the content.
Yeah.
But you would have to do it beforehand with a tiered ticket. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to say sell something during the performance, you'd have to do it manually. I think you couldn't do it automatically through it, but you could say, if you donate now, I'll look at the log of who donated during this and I'll send it to you. But no, there is not an automated way. You could automate it to have a certain ticket price, which would include the download, but you'd have to do that beforehand.
Yeah. No, I was just curious. It actually kind of leads into the next question, which is, as a person who's like a concert promoter and a musician and a composer and all of these things, in a hypothetical situation where tomorrow everything goes back to normal, would you find yourself actually investing, you know, the same amount of time in this, or would you say, you know, you know, would you set up the wing, like, would you set up more the streaming wing of Diatribe, or would you kind of go, you know, once in a while we're going to put our toe into it, but it's not our gig?
No, I think that what's happening now is going to be is going to demarcate what's happening forever. I don't think we can go backwards. And you know, there have been some really exciting developments from what we've seen. The big thing for me, and Ken touched on that as well, is that you can now access an audience that's international and global. In a way that previously you'd have had to tour enormously to do. And, you know, especially with these kind of, say, you know, niche musics like contemporary music or improvised music, you know, you're looking at within Dublin or within Ireland, you have you know, a limited audience, you know, whatever it is, 5-10% of the population who are into that kind of stuff. But every country in the world has that same 5-10%. So if you're able to access that, then globally you have the potential to massively increase your reach, and we've seen that as a label anyway. You know, actually 85% of our audience are in America for contemporary Irish music. You know, the audience is global, and this whole live streaming mechanism and platform is a way to reach out to those people and engender a kind of a wider global community. So no, I think these things are really important. I mean, even with, you know, streaming, with live real-time audio, as you touched on, it's still limited to 300, 400 miles, you know, geographically. But with the streaming link, you're not at all linked. You're not tied to that. So you can really be just speaking to people anywhere in different time zones. And certainly, like, I mean, I've been listening to music from all over the world and watching live streams from people in places that I never would have looked to find, simply because you know, we've got this kind of window of opportunity. So yeah, no, I think what's happening now will be here to stay.
Can I just jump in on that?
Sure.
Sorry, yeah, no, just to kind of, I suppose, give a practical example of that in practice. So I'm on the board of the Europe Jazz Network, so we're very active, you know, in talking to each other, and we've actually been discussing talking more with our colleagues in Europe than we ever have been before through the magic of the mosaic of Zoom, which I'm sure we're all fed up of now anyway. But the point is that you know, there's a lot going on here that won't change, because some of this was happening anyway. You know, it's inevitable. I think what the COVID pandemic has done has accelerated that rapidly, while at the same time exposing the frailty of our cultural economy underneath that. But basically, so pivoting into it is kind of, I think we all need to kind of lean into it, you know what I mean, because it's not going to go away, right? So we're trialing a system of digital touring. We're just calling it digital touring for now, whereby, you know, if audiences, because we will have limited audiences in the live space, you know, in the short to medium term, so they would come and hear a live concert, but they would also then get a digital concert. So basically, let's say you go to a show in Dublin, and we have an arrangement with clubs in Switzerland, in Finland, in Sweden, and Norway. So basically, they record their show, we record ours, and then at a later date we kind of swap over. So the audiences are getting this hybrid model. And for an Irish artist, they perform live once, it is filmed, and then they have the we will say to them that they have, you know, these digital opportunities in other venues, like really good venues, and that's without setting foot on a plane. It's 100% carbon neutral. You know, I think we really need to rethink how we kind of move and how we interact. And I think that the digital sphere is an important part of that. And I think digital touring could be a precursor to real touring, you know. So we're trying to make the best of what is, you know, very much a new reality.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out actually that you can also, when you're doing these live events, you can limit them geographically. So even though it's a live stream, you can still do it just for America or just for Ireland, or, you know, just for specific regions. So as Ken said, you can essentially do a digital tour of individual dates, which are still geographically fixed. And I totally agree. I think that, you know, we have to consider the environmental impact of what we're doing as humans. You know, and the question is, you know, can we offset the cost of flying somewhere in a plane and the travel and, you know, the general impact that we're having in some way. I mean, at the same time, the cloud is not it's not free either in an environmental impact. You know, we tend to think about the internet as being this kind of virtual space, but really we're talking about massive server farms. You know, huge data centers which have the same amount of energy and water usage as towns. So you know, the digital model can certainly seem as if it has a lesser environmental impact, but we really need to think about, well, what is that actually when we really look at the calibration of it?
Well, it's like a lot of things in history that were designed for one thing and that ended up being used for another one. And I know that people are now sometimes reducing their rehearsal time. Even if they're planning a live performance, they are doing the rehearsal time more digitally and engaging about the process. And that's reducing some of the travel time. Was there another question? I've been scanning Emma says that she thinks that we can grow audiences for contemporary music. And that has certainly been a conversation in that various venues that are too big usually for contemporary music audiences and are now too small for other types of music could be repurposed in a socially distanced way to incorporate a regular contemporary music audience. And these are things that are being explored, but I think the reason CMC is doing this is that, as Ken said, there's probably no rowing back. I think there'll be hybrids of everything going forward. And even if we get a vaccine and live performances come back business as usual, the can of worms is open on the online world. So, Owen, I see your hand up there, Owen Callery.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a hypothetical, like what would you, in the digital, what would you like, you think is possible, but you haven't quite seen on a digital service yet, that you think would make it, you know, we can all say, well, obviously we can do 360 audio or whatever else, but what is it that you think might be another angle that could push it into something that's very different from the live experience?
I think it's the VR interactivity thing. It's giving the listener the option to actually change what they're hearing. You know, which 360 doesn't do. I mean, it allows you to change the mix, but it doesn't allow you to change the music. You know, and I think we're coming to a point where that's going to be possible. You know, maybe as an app or as an app-based model, but to the point where, you know, if you were listening to a performance of the Goldberg variations, that you could decide the order of the variations, or, you know, if you're looking at a generative process, you know, an electronic process, that you can actually change the parameters. So that it involves a level of interactivity between the audience and the musician, and that they're involved in the performance in a kind of a direct way. I think that's something I'd certainly like to see. I mean, I know it's almost theoretically possible, but I haven't actually seen it really being done in a convincing way that's kind of musically meaningful.
I think having composers coming together from very different worlds, literally, to collaborate on work, and it be presented in this kind of within this new paradigm, and maybe also I think could be a boon for interdisciplinary work. Like, I mean, real digital artists, digital creatives, you know, the people who work in game design and all of those graphics, and really kind of just create a work that is kind of, I suppose, universal to this new concept. I think there's an opportunity there for collaboration that just would never be possible in the physical world, because it would cost too much money, it would be too big, you know. I think there's a ton of creative opportunities, actually.
Yep. Elizabeth, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, while Owen said it, like what works better, like online and stuff, like even like something like a question and answer forum, like at a concert I'd normally like leave. I don't enjoy them at all. It's just like a room of people looking really tense about, like, if I put my hand up, is someone going to see me? And like there's something much more democratic about question and answers on Zoom, which to me has been really good. And like loads of platforms I've done them. You can put in your chat, you can put in a short comment, like, 'cause sometimes there's a question like that happens in a, you know, discuss with the audience, and
which will discuss with the panel and the audience, but it's very much the panel has a little discussion at the front of the room and the odd question comes in from the audience. But to me, the Zoom form is like hugely better. And I'd hope there's some way we can kind of continue this kind of way of having post-concert talks even, would to me be something to look at.
That's actually, Elizabeth, why we chose Zoom for this platform. We considered other things like webinar and that, because for its two-way traffic and almost like the queuing system. Often in these live panel discussions, you might have your hand up, but there's 7 more hands up. And by the time they get to you, the issue has passed and you feel foolish now dragging people back to 10 minutes beforehand. Whereas, as you say, you can put a comment in the chat function, or you know, there's multiple ways of approaching the debate.
Yeah, but also I'm talking about like live, like real life question and answer forums. To me, this is much better than like being in like the project, sitting as one of 300 or even one of 20, and the panel at the front just have their own little conversation. So, yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and even with just musicians as well. I mean, that's one thing I found with watching performances that I've done myself, and everyone's there is watching it. You can actually talk to people in a way that you just wouldn't do at a gig. You know.
Yeah, that's something that's come out, Nick, that a lot of composers, and Kenneth mentioned composers there, because composers are the people who are very rarely on the stage. They're sitting in the audience, and in a live situation, somebody is from the stage is looking as to where they are, and they pop up and do a quick bow. And the conversation, nobody can find them afterwards. And the people who know them, other composers,
probably in the bar.
other composers who know them end up sort of speaking in a stressful situation, whereas a Zoom is an opportunity for everybody to speak, you know, in a more, I suppose, easygoing way. Speaking of which, Kenneth, do you want to give a little plug there for your survey if you need more people? So was that a little bit of advance results?
I mean, that was just a preliminary. I mean, you know, it was a quite a short survey, but a very important one. And you know what we were very surprised by was the sheer number of people who responded. Like the audiences want to let us know how they're feeling through all of this, and I think it's fantastic that we're all having discussions as organizers, and as artists. But I think it's really important to consider what the audience want, you know, before we go, you know, headlong into. I mean, I know lots of venues around Europe that are spending thousands upon thousands of euro on high-end camera equipment and dolly tracks for their live venues. I think it's a bit foolish. Because, you know, maybe the audience isn't into that, and they're just going to wait until, you know, February, and then they're going to be like, okay, now I feel comfortable going out again. So I don't know. I mean, but as we said earlier, it's, you know, the hybridization is it's not just a buzzword. It's, you know, it reflects where we're going. But yeah, our audience the response was amazing. You know, so we got a lot of really, really good information there about how to proceed. Well, we're still as confused as we ever were, basically.
Yeah, and Anselm has put into the chat that SARC at Queen's University Belfast has a lot of cool VR equipment, and they're doing a lot of work in this area. So that's good for us all to know. Also, CNCR.
Sorry, Linda. At Classical Next, just briefly, just to speak about VR. Now, it was pseudo VR, but at Jazz Ahead, which is the equivalent of Classical Next, we put Irish artists on VR headsets, and we did virtual showcasing, and we couldn't film them in 3D or anything because we had no money. But what we did was we just basically, like when you're talking to promoters, you know, you just want a captivated audience of one, and that's the person who can probably book your band or your project. So we got noise cancelling headphones, and we got VR headsets, and we basically created this immersive space for them. Now, they were just watching what was the equivalent of a giant cinema screen. So the performance was on a giant cinema screen, but like they could look nowhere else. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, we might attend your performance, you know, at 11 o'clock tonight, maybe, you know, for 10 minutes, but they're busy at the bar drinking or whatever. They were captivated. I think there's a lot to be said for just getting people like that, you know what I mean, in that space, and then selling the content to them, because it certainly worked. Even the novelty factor alone, you know, had loads of people coming to our booth and, you know, wanting to experience this, even though it wasn't even full VR. But I think we're still in that stage actually for a lot of people who haven't put on VR headsets or anything like that before. It's very novel, you know.
Excellent. So just to finish off my point there, Ken, I assume it's your pinned tweet is your survey on?
If you say so. I think Aoife has that done
so.
now.
Well, it'll be pinned after this, because I know you'll go and pin it, won't you?
I'm just about to hit a message now. Thanks, Linda.
Good man. It's just that there's a good audience here and they know people, and it's often, it's not how many people you get, it's what they're going to say.
Sure, it's the quality of responses.
And we're delighted certainly with any surveys like that and to share them.
Absolutely. Once it's done, we're going to share it publicly with everybody. Yeah.
Fab. Has anybody else any other questions? Or I see the Galway Music Residency is over there with Julie Seagrave. This surely would be this kind of, hopefully this will be helpful, because Galway Music Residency, of course, has a colossal number of events. I have to confess I'm on the board, so just saying that. A huge number of events. And so if some of those could go online even into the future, I'm sure it would make your workload a lot more viable, Julie.
Yes, yeah, we're looking into all different options, and Sinead is here as well with us.
Oh yeah,
so new board member. Yeah, so yeah, Maeve is really the one now at the moment who is trying to figure out what venues will be able to use and what the regulations are. It's really difficult to even plan anything at the moment, because yeah, things change kind of every day, but we're doing a good bit of filming and stuff with Contempo to have online performances, and most of the things that we've put up, everything we put up online so far has been free of charge, just with donations optional. So that's been slow to begin with, but hopefully we'll get there.
I'm sure you will. I see Marion and Owen are both, you know, pretty much full-time teachers, I think, in WIT and UL respectively, and there's a lot of talk about online, you know, teaching, and I'm sure all of these, there could be potentially some donation buttons for people who do extramural classes. Is that being looked at all?
Well, I've just unmuted myself there. Hi everyone. To be honest, we really don't know what's happening. We're going back to lectures on the 28th of September, but we don't have very much in place just yet. So maybe I could speak a little bit more about that in August, you know. Yeah, what I did, I was actually trying to send in just a comment there, but I actually, just from my own experience, I love the whole interdisciplinary approach. You know, just recently I worked with Junction Festival and I collaborated with an artist and stuff. So while I think the absence of the live performance is, you know, we're all disappointed that we don't have the live performance, I actually loved the new approach, you know, like the visuals and the multidisciplinary approach. So yeah, that's just a comment rather than a question, but I do think there's a lot we can do with regard to teaching online. We just have to wait and see what the directive is. I don't know if there's someone else there, but we actually don't have, we're doing it all basically ourselves from home with charts and keyboards and various things, you know, so we just have to see. I suppose in music we're lucky that the numbers are kind of smaller, we'll say, than in faculties like nursing and stuff like that. So we are optimistic that, I'll finish on this, the general consensus is, I think you can manage most subjects like composition. While it's very difficult, you're sharing screen and proofing and all that kind of thing is difficult, but the actual instrumental teaching is proven to be quite stressful and difficult for people, you know. So we're hoping that we might have that one-to-one contact back again in some way or other, be it a week on or a week off. That's really all I could say at this point, you know.
But that's a classic example of something that could be monetized if it was done properly.
Absolutely.
Because, for example, I know a lot of piano teachers are finding it very good because the student pre-records They don't teach two-way. The student pre-records, they submit their, and then they get a detailed opportunity to actually comment on what the student is doing. And therefore you could get master classes from somebody in Tokyo while you're in Shinron, County Offaly, and you couldn't possibly get a master class ever again like that. But if somebody famous like that is prepared to take pre-recorded performances by you and give you a master class on them, there's a golden opportunity for monetizing.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm not going to keep people for the rest of the day, and it's tea time, but anybody has any other questions, or if you put something into the chat line that didn't surface, please don't hesitate to wave your hand now, and I will otherwise thank Nick for a fantastic survey. And I think, Nick, that's how you described it when we were talking, and I think that's exactly what people want. They almost want a go compare type of thing, whereby somebody who has their head around this, has looked at all the options, gives them a thumbnail, sketch through it, and we will be providing the slides and links and everything, and you can all pore over them in greater detail. Thanks for the Bula boss there, Keith, my colleague.
Great. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone.
And thanks, Nick,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Take care.
Yeah.
See you
Thank you so much.
Thanks a million.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye. Bye-bye.